Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Gavinsky's Tutorials. Today I'm looking at the Swam Trumpet bundle by Audio Modeling, and I'm going to talk in a second about all the details of this, who are Audio Modeling, what is Swam, should you buy these, how many should you buy them on desktop or iOS, etc, etc. I'll have a detailed introduction in a while, and I'm going to let you hear all 5 apps in this bundle and help you compare them to each other. But first, let's just start with listening to one example, and let's just hear what the trumpet can sound like. Now let's hear it with a good dose of reverb added. Okay, so that's just the first little listen. Now, there are a bunch of important things that I've got to say now. So one thing is I will be doing a few videos on these apps, and each time I'll have 1 or 2 copies of apps to give away. All the details of what's available, when the winners will be announced, what you've got to do to win, etc., etc., is in the pinned comment at the top of the YouTube comment section. So take a look there, everyone, and please do read it carefully. People often don't read them carefully. Make sure you read it carefully. It's not always the same instructions every time when I have giveaways. So thanks anyway to Audio Modeling for providing those. Really appreciate it. Second thing I want to say, I'm not a keyboard player, never mind a jazz or classical keyboard player. I'm a rhythm guitarist actually, so my keyboard skills are limited. Nevertheless, I do think I've got decent level of expression. But yeah, bear in mind that I'm not the world's best keyboard player. Very, very, very far from it. So sorry about that. I wish I was, but I still think this video will be very useful for you if you're trying to decide which of these apps to buy. Another thing I want to mention is how I'm playing these. So I'm using a Roli Seaboard. So one of the great things about the Swam sounds, all of them, is that they're all MPE. And in case you're not that familiar with what MPE is a kind of MIDI standard that gives you a lot more expressivity than regular MIDI does. So this is a huge advantage to buying these rather than buying, for example, some sample-based trumpet instrument that is not MPE. This really, really, really makes a difference. So these are physically modeled, they're not samples. And being MPE means they're far, far more expressive. So how are they more expressive on MPE? Well, on my keyboard here, when I press, I'm getting these increases in the expression slider, which you can see over here. So this makes it really, really easy to control the volume. And this is not just volume also, right? There are kind of filters and things like that that are getting changed to make it sound exactly like the instrument itself would when you play it softly. It's got a completely different character. And for example, you notice all the breath tone and everything much more. And when you play it loud, it's got this brightness, right? So playing with an MPE controller gives you a lot of expression. So it's really nice to be able to use pressure for that. Now, what Audio Modeling do, on their videos, they use just a regular MIDI keyboard. They don't use an MPE keyboard, but they use a foot controller to control expression. And then they use the mod wheel to control vibrato. So on an MPE keyboard, I can control vibrato just by wiggling my finger around. And of course I can also use my finger to do pitch bends. And of course I can combine all these things together. So that makes using an MPE keyboard really the ideal way to play these instruments. So what if you don't have an MPE keyboard? Well, for example, you could, on iOS, you could use one of the MPE keyboards that are available, but there are some buts here. So first of all, for example, you could use KB1 by Kai Arras, but that's not pressure sensitive. You could use GeoShred. It also doesn't recognize pressure. On GeoShred, the way you would do expression is by playing further up the y-axis, and it would be the same with KB1. You'd have to play further up the y-axis on the key to control expression. It's honestly not as good as being able to use pressure. And then you have Velocity Keyboard, and Velocity Keyboard does kind of have pressure. You can set it up that it responds to pressure, but it's not all that accurate, and you're definitely not going to get the same level of expression that you can get by playing a dedicated MPE controller. So if you want to play these expressively on a keyboard, you're ideally going to want a foot pedal and a mod wheel. But, you know, even without those things, the timbre of these instruments is really, really beautiful. So, I mean, even if you're just playing them on a regular keyboard, like let's just use the AUM keyboard, you're still getting a beautiful tone. But remember that, you know, here, there's no mod wheel, for example. The AUM keyboard is definitely not the ideal keyboard to be playing these kind of things. Anyway, just to mention that they do sound good, even if you're not using an MP controller, or even if you don't have good mod wheel technique and so on. But ideally, you're going to either want a regular MIDI keyboard with a foot pedal, and you have good skills at using the mod wheel for vibrato, or you're using an MPE keyboard, in which case you also really need to be prepared to work on your playing skills if you actually want to try to sound like a real brass instrument. And that may be something that's important for you, or it may not. As I showed earlier, just playing nice long notes with a nice bit of reverb, if you're not a great keyboard player, you can still get some lovely sounds, and it can sound great in ambient and other genres. So first, just let's listen to a couple of examples of what these can sound like, actually, processed a bit more before I go on and demo the actual individual instruments themselves in a more pure way. Okay, so let's take a look at these and see what are some of the differences between these 5 apps in the Trumpet bundle. Now, if you're like me, you don't care about genre. I couldn't give a damn what people are using in classical, jazz, or whatever, because I have absolutely zero interest in trying to make those kinds of music on an iPad. I'm far more interested in ambient and experimental and stuff like that. So the only thing that matters to me really is the timbre. And I love the sounds of all of these, to be honest. And I'm really glad that I've got all of them. But if I had to buy them myself, I would definitely be thinking quite critically about it because it is a lot of money. So let's just look at some of the differences between them. So, okay, here we're on the B flat Flugelhorn. Now, I might get some DSP spikes from time to time because I've got 5 of these going here, plus I've got a couple of heavy duty apps in my mic chain and so on, and big dirty fab filter reverb there as well. So basically, Flugelhorn is compared with Trumpet. Sorry, let me start that again. So that trumpet just has that, that lovely brightness to it. It's one reason why trumpet is such a popular instrument in so many forms of music. It's really good for cutting through a mix. Another thing about trumpet, it just has a lovely mixture of qualities. So, I mean, first of all, it really is the sound of jazz in a way. I mean, the trumpet and the saxophone. It can be a real party instrument. It can be very melancholy as well, but even when it's melancholy, it's always got this slight sort of optimistic tone because of that lovely brightness. And it's just got a certain smokiness to it, you know? Like, if trumpet was a whiskey, it would definitely be some kind of, dirty, peaty whiskey, right? I mean, it's beautiful. So if I was only buying one instrument from these, I would personally probably go for the B flat trumpet. Now let's see if you can notice any difference between the B flat trumpet and the C trumpet at this part of the range. Let's try that again. Try and keep this timbre in mind. Not noticing very much difference probably, right? Let's go up a little bit and see. So pretty similar. Obviously the C trumpet can go a little bit higher and it can't go quite as low as the B flat trumpet, but there's not very much difference in it. C trumpet is used more in orchestral music. B flat trumpet is much, much more common in jazz. I just want to give a shout out to my friend Elad Sabol, who's a music teacher. I talked to him a bit about all these different horns and who would use them and which would be most useful and so on. He told me that your average jazz trumpet player would probably have a couple of B flat trumpets before he would actually invest in a C trumpet. But if we go right up to the highest notes, sorry, that's really, really piercing there. Let's have a listen to these very highest ones. And let's just compare them. The B flat trumpet right up here at the highest peaks has a bit more of a thin and reedy quality to it, it seems to me. So it's important for you, if it's important for you to have a bit more purity of tone right up in very, very high notes, you might like the C. Now the Piccolo has a very clean and sweet and pure tone. I do like it very much. It just doesn't have that parp again that the trumpet has. Now, let's look at the Piccolo a little bit lower down. So one thing you'll notice if you're playing the Piccolo very softly, you won't notice a huge amount of breath noise compared to the trumpets. There's just a little bit more noise with these. Which you may want, you know, it adds character in a way. But if you want something very just very clean, then the Piccolo is a good choice. And again, the Flugelhorn has a bit more noise in it at these low volume levels. Now if we compare the Flugelhorn and the trumpet, the Flugelhorn is mellower. It's a bit more melancholy because it just doesn't have that same level of brightness as the trumpet. I mean, it can still be pretty bright. It is a brass instrument, right? But definitely a different character to the trumpet. The Flugelhorn's really nice for getting a nice introspective feeling. I think it can be kind of the saddest of these. Now, this E-flat Flugelhorn just goes lower basically than the other one. So if that's important to you, this is as low as that one can go. Obviously this one can go higher. This is the highest note on this one. You see that's mellower. Now, by the way, something I'm not going to go into in this video much, just some of the controls. So it's important to mention that these can have different mutes and things. And there are some different presets, by the way. Like this Miles one. Let's look at the different mutes. And by the way, you can move these around with your finger. Or of course you could automate them, and the parameters are all exposed, including, by the way, the locked ones, strangely. I like, by the way, how it shows you here. My mouse has died. I like how it shows you just below that trumpet there, just while we're waiting for my mouse. I love how it shows you the quality of the notes that you're playing. It's a nice little touch. Now, you can control the breath noise, so if you want less breath noise, or more, you can add it. You'll notice this more when you're playing softly. You can hear it more there, hopefully. You've got this growl. Now again, this is something that you could assign to various things, you know, the y-axis on your keyboard, or channel pressure, and so on and so on. You can open up all these different MIDI learn options and stuff here. You can set your CCs, all this kind of stuff. Now you can see on a Seaboard, the way it's set up, this is being triggered when I play on the y-axis already. It's already set up for that. So again, just to repeat what I said earlier, pressure on a proper MPE keyboard is going to trigger expression, and y-axis is going to trigger flutter tongue. But you can set that up to do things whatever way you like. Vibrato, because I'm playing on an MPE keyboard, I would do the vibrato myself. But you have this vibrato slider there. You've got a few different pages here with various parameters on them that you can play around with. Again, some of these are locked, but the parameters are exposed. All right, so I'm sure you'd agree these really sound incredible. They are beautiful. And oh, one important thing that I forgot to mention. So when you click on the MIDI thing here, okay, let me do that. Let me show you that again. So let's just close this. So when we're on the main screen and we have this little MIDI thing up here, click here, and then this thing will appear, presets. So if you've got an MPE controller, you can just look for it here and select the preset for your controller. So I've got the Seaboard default preset. And this is really important actually because MPE controllers all sort of tend to do things a little bit differently. So it's great that they've taken the time to go in and set these all up for different MPE keyboards. I really appreciate that. And also breath controllers, by the way. Because it can be a real pain in the ass MPE actually getting compatibility. There are so many crappy MPE implementations, and I'm really glad to say this is a really good MPE implementation. I just love how it feels to play this on the Seaboard. It's beautiful. The Seaboard can be a little bit hard to play at times because you've got to press quite hard to really get full expression, but I feel the way that audio modeling have done it, it's just perfect. I just feel it's so enjoyable to play this on the Seaboard. I don't have to play too hard to get full expression. It really suits me absolutely perfectly. I cannot emphasize enough how important that is and how glad I am that they did a really good job with that. Now, one more thing I want to mention. So you can save your own presets, and what you can do is, like I did here, for example, I saved the external controller mapping in here. I also clicked here and chose set as default, and that means that now every time I open up, it will remember that I'm playing this with a Seaboard. If you don't do this, then every time you open up the apps, you're going to have to go in and configure things again for your controller. So take the time when you get this to go in and modify the presets. Now, I've only done this for the init preset, actually. I haven't done it for the other ones. But it seems to be remembering now with all of these anyway that I'm playing an MP player, so maybe I don't need to set that up for all of them. Sorry, playing an MP keyboard. Another thing worth mentioning, maybe you have this transpose thing here. This won't actually change the range of the instrument. It'll just transpose the keyboard, and it will also transpose on your external keyboard as well. So, for example, here I'm playing a C note. I'll see now how it's being transposed up. Oh yeah, one more thing. So we have here this effects thing, and we have a few different things there. Compression, EQ, and some reverb related things. Reverb. Reverb gets to maybe something like maybe that's something like a large hall, I'm guessing. But you're not going to get these kind of astronomical reverbs that you can get on things like the fab filter, and I can't emphasize enough how enjoyable it is to play these with really, really big reverbs. So there we go for my first video on the Swam apps, or Swam, sorry, as I say, I've got this habit of I've been calling them Swam for a couple of years. I really love these. I wish that they didn't have anything locked in them. I'd really, really, really prefer there was no need for any in-app purchase, and I don't like the fact that I don't know how much the in-app purchase is. Or how it's going to work if there are, if you need to buy the in-app, if you buy 15 apps and you need to get an in-app purchase for all 15, I don't know. I think that information should be out already. People should know really how much the in-app purchases are. But apart from that, I must say I really love these. I really love them, and you're going to be hearing them used a lot in my videos from now on, I would imagine. So today we've only touched on them. We've only done the trumpet pack. And in my next video, like I say, I'll do at least one more video. Then we'll look at least one of the other packs. Maybe I'll just look at both, probably, actually, in the next video. I think I'll have time to do those in one video without making it too long. There's some treats in there as well in those other ones, so I'm not going to preview them today. But there's a lot of good stuff in there as well. I really, really like the tubas, for example. So, everyone, I hope you enjoyed this. Do remember, I really rely on you guys to support the channel. Help me out by not watching with an ad blocker, watching some ads, help share videos on social media, contribute via PayPal and stuff. I haven't started a Patreon yet. Just basically anything that you can do to help out the channel is greatly, greatly appreciated, everybody. All right, I'll see you in the next video. Thanks a lot, folks.